If you could have anyone, real or fictional, as your intuition coach, who would it be?
The first thing that came to my mind is Oprah and Alicia Keys. I've always known that I have this deep connection with African culture. And
Mm.
that's why my nickname that when I was there living in St. Thomas, they call me Black and Ease. And these are the nickname I did not come up with. Okay. These are the thing that just organically it just came up for them, right? So for me, I'm like, but I've always dealt with racism around me when I was growing up because I didn't have Black people around me. But then when I saw this other culture, I was so fascinated. But while, with my whole culture, the Asian, they don't expose themselves. So when I think of Oprah, it's like she is the second god to me. And Alicia Keys is just how she creates songs and music, just what they stand behind. I mean, this is what we know from, of course, social media and stuff like that. But there's something about them that is so deep that I feel resonate and connect with. Right. Of course, I don't know them personally. So that's why I always laugh. Like if I were to be able to marry any guys that I know through an internet, it would be Trevor Noah. And again, it's just he's not the cutest guy. So when I always tell my friends that, yeah, I would totally marry Trevor Noah because he's witty, he's funny, he's sophisticated, he's smart, look, yeah, he's not a fat looking guy, but would you drool over him? No.
I hope you're not watching.
You are, it's okay. Because you know what? It's a package thing and you're all
It is.
packaged.
Pretty face only goes so far. You need to be able to have some good conversation there too. Otherwise,
And humor. That guy is
oh,
so freaking funny and he jokes about his race. And I love that, when people can make fun of themselves and admitting to something that they've grown up and they've seen and experienced, right? For me, it speaks volume when like, you can admit to, racism that I grew up with. It's ridiculous. But then that allows me to see like, okay, I don't want to be that,
mhm.
right? And I choose not to. That's how
Yeah.
I see life. When something that was so strong within our culture, then you're like, does it align with me or does it not? Just like abusive parenting and stuff like that, right? Then you either be it or you go far from what that is. Like this is us, right? With Jack. Jack becomes like the total opposite of his father.
If you haven't seen This Is Us, it tells the story of multiple generations and how their family evolves and why it is the way it is.
Yeah,
And it's
I will
pretty.
definitely check it out.
And by the way, I basically grew up with Oprah in my house. I, like a lot of people, had a mother that watched it every single day, like recorded it and watched it after work. So I feel like she was part of my formative years.
I think they're those mentors we grow up with. Also, fun fact, wrote Oprah in fourth grade because our teacher asked us to write a celebrity that we felt inspired by, wrote her, and she wrote back, I still have this letter to this day.
Oh,
That is
wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
That
I
is,
need to hang it up in my office actually talking to y'all about it just to remind myself. Because that was
yeah.
such, once again, we know we should not be seeking validation outside, but it just felt so affirming to be like, Oprah, who is like, has so many things going on. I am but one person in the masses, but she still took time to be like, I'm going to write this fourth grader to wish her like well on her journey, tell her that like I believe in her and that she can do anything she sets her mind to. And I was like, oh, such an inspiration.
Yes, frame that. Because
Yeah.
that's definitely the resonant that, you're tapped in with Oprah and it's always with you,
I feel like
right?
it would be Brendan Burchard. I don't know if you all know who he is. He is a life coach, but he also is what I would say like a motivational speaker. He also is a teacher. To me, I feel like me and him, they're just something that tells me we've met in another life. He is someone on my list who I know I will sit down at a table with one day to brainstorm and create together. I feel like the way that he would approach that conversation about intuition would be with that listen, tap into it, but also like question. For example, when I left my job, fun fact, I used to work in higher education and was going to transition out because I was very burnt out and was going to actually go ahead and take a step into another corporate job and had been looking and started applying. I can tell you all, my gut feeling told me that was wrong. But like everyone is like, you need to get your job. I will say my fiance was so sweet. He did tell me take 2 weeks off to just decompress, but he was still very much like, you still need to get another job. But something told me I don't want to get back into the same cycle where I'm working for someone and they are once again telling me, do not serve the people you're meant to serve, or like, you can't do that because it doesn't meet this quota. And so my intuition, like, I didn't realize it at that point, but something was telling me like, don't do it. And it wasn't until I met this coach who was telling me about what he did as a life coach that's when my intuition was starting to speak up and be like, just look into this a little bit more, right? And what it was is just a thought in my mind that was just kind of telling me like, look into that. Because as we know, there can also be the voice in our head that's like, ooh, but what if you like do that and like you fail? Or like, what if you do that and like you look like a fool, or like whatever it is. And that's when I started to have to realize, like, okay, you have to differentiate those voices. And that's where I think that meditating and sitting is so important, Brooke, especially as you build that relationship with your intuition. But I feel like Brendan would be that coach who'd be like, okay, is that your intuition, or is that someone else speaking? Is that literally someone else speaking from your past? Is that your ego speaking? Is that, your emotions speaking? And then would be able to be like, okay, let's just take a moment, let's do some mindful breathing, and then let's start to check in. Like, what is your heart telling you? And to your point, Brooke, it's like listening to that voice and starting to like, I feel like ground yourself and then look around. And then once again, as you grow your intuition, you can tap into it, I feel like, in a variety of different places. But I feel like Brendan would just have this approach where it's like, question things, but also like fully dive in. And when I say question things, I just think, once again, what is your beliefs? What is not? Where's fear coming in, where you could approach fear like courageously. And then I also feel like he's a very safe and comforting person. I also will say he inspired me with the way that he listens to his intuition, which was telling him, like, you don't have to do the same thing everyone else in your town did. And, when he had a life death experience, he listened to his intuition, which was like, this was just reminding you how precious life is and you need to tap into your purpose. And he's like, all right, intuition, I'm listening in.
This is October, and we are moving into the Halloween season. And from the time I was very little, loved Halloween. So my answer is going to land us in the fictional realm. I always thought that if there was one movie that I wish that I could just live in, it would be Practical Magic. I love that the story is all told through the women. It starts with like her great great grandmother. I love their connection to each other. I feel like in that house, there would be nothing but listen to your intuition. They would have good conversations. And since I love all my female friends and feel that kind of like connection to female members of my family, I feel like, especially from the aunts, I could definitely get that kind of intuition, guidance, and coaching that I would need. We know that many women struggle with self-doubt and like second guessing, and I blame that on societal conditioning. What practical strategy would you recommend to help women enhance their intuitive skills and confidently lean into those gut feelings?
I'll maybe jump in first because two things come to mind. One, I definitely think that self-love and that self-worth, going down that journey to continue to hold yourself in the space that you hold others, whether that's, self-compassion, whether that's giving yourself grace. And I feel like if you don't give yourself that self-love or worth, you really do question, like, should I be listening to myself? Am I worth listening to? Isn't it better to listen to someone else? They should know better, right? And so I feel like it helps you navigate that self-doubt and see that you are worthy, A, as you are, and then B, you really are an incredible person and you really do know yourself best and what you want, right? Because I think of it as simple as, if I were to ask all three of us what we would define if we were to be in our 80s, or like, let's say we're 100 years old and we're still like living, kicking it, we have our grandkids around us, what would we tell them to be like, no, this is how I know my life was successful, right? Like, this is how I know that I lived a good life. For me, it's going to be living in the countryside and being able to bring strangers to do retreats like on my land. And we're going to incorporate animals and like horseback riding and things into it. I feel like it just reminds you, at the end of the day, you know what you want for yourself. And as you continue to pour into your cup, which I think is just focusing on that self-love and that self-worth. And that could be getting a coach to help you on that. I think that could be doing journaling. That could be just getting to know yourself a little bit better. And of course, like I mentioned, giving yourself grace, because we can be the hardest on ourselves. But I think the second piece to that, as you're working on that self-worth, I also think it is taking that time, especially if it's a very new thing to be learning about intuition, is to create more of that space to tap into yourself and listen. And so, as Brooke mentioned earlier, it can be as simple as you taking a moment. First of all, maybe get back into your body. So that could be doing some breath work, that could be doing some meditating, and then go into bringing up a thought of like, how am I feeling in this area? And just see what starts to come up. And then once again, start to sort through some of those things. As I mentioned, for example, when I was thinking, should I get a new job or should I look down the path of starting a business? My intuition was telling me, you can do this. This is an option for you. But my fear was like, my ego was telling me, you can't do this. And so it was sorting through all of that and being like, okay, where are these different things coming up? And I think that takes time to figure out what is it that's coming from where. I think most importantly is that you start to sort through emotions versus feelings. And I know that sounds like they're one and the same, but I think of it as like, if I'm approaching it with like an angry emotion, the results are going to show up as that, right? Versus if I sort through it and start to figure out where's those feelings coming from, like I said, that red light, green light, maybe you are making a choice that's going against your gut, or is it because really something's trying to hold you back into your comfort zone, and differentiating like which one is it? So creating that time, and then as time goes on, I think you will see intuition showing up in a variety of different ways, whether it's that gut feeling that tells you like maybe you shouldn't collaborate with that person, maybe you shouldn't date that person because something tells you that like it's the vibe's off. It can be as simple as it telling you, your intuition's like, don't go down that road. Something tells me that's not good vibes. And then you slowly tap into it more to where it gets to the point where it's like, okay, what is my intuition telling me when it comes to this new business idea that I'm building? Is it telling me that I should, become a motivational speaker? Those are a couple things that come to mind for me.
And the way I look at that is, how would I speak to my daughter if she was self-doubting? So would I speak to her like I would speak to myself? And that's been also helpful for me to switch the perspective. I was able to kind of shift that self-doubt to empowerment, to questioning why and where is it coming from.
That is awesome. That takeaway, like how would you speak to someone that you love? And that needs to be your self-check for you is big. And I think that's for like all of us all the time. We know that engaging in any kind of negative self-talk brings us down this spiral of self-doubt, right? Because we kind of like bring ourselves into the darkest place possible, and it happens so fast. But if we're thinking about building ourselves up and erasing self-doubt, make a journal of like all the things that you've accomplished that you're proud of, and you use that as your body of proof. So whenever you are feeling doubt or insecurity, that you can go back. And so I think this works like beautifully for intuition too. Knowing decisions that you've made that came from your intuition and being able to note those as proof to yourself that you can and should listen to yourself is really, really important. So for anyone who's like beginning that journey, that might be something that they want to consider, just because we are creatures of habit, we are creatures of routine. We look for proof in order to make our decisions. And sometimes that's external proof, but it could just be our own history that could inform how we move forward.
I love that journaling idea, Brooke. And something else came to mind to maybe kind of double back on that journaling, because I think you also bring up a good point, right? Sometimes we don't see or like reflect or have that awareness in the moment. And then you do take time later on, whether that's like a nice reminder of like, look how far I've come, whether it's like, oh, what was my action? What did I think of that later? It would be a nice thing every evening to just reflect and see how, throughout the day, gauging, say, for example, maybe at work, you went to a meeting. How do you feel like that went? Did you feel like it's like went good? Do you feel like it was uncomfortable? And if it was uncomfortable, was it because like maybe you were challenged a little bit? Maybe you had to speak up and actually present your project and advocate for it. And everyone in the room, like you felt a little nervous, but then you presented and everyone's like, yes, let's go forward on that. And you're like, okay, nice. Versus like maybe you felt uncomfortable in the sense that everyone on the project was like, no, that's going to cost too much and it's going to require too much of our time. But maybe in the whole grand scheme of thing, it would have served like the greater purpose of the mission. And so that made you uncomfortable because you realized like, oh, they're not, say, for example, valuing the people they serve. They're more so valuing the money or the finances. And so now your gut or your intuition can be telling you like, as you reflect back, like, oh, maybe that's not something that like I align with. What is that like really telling me? Maybe you are no longer aligned with this job that you have and you should find a new one. But I love that piece that you brought up about reflecting because I think it's definitely very important. I definitely encourage people, don't filter yourself, just, write it down. And I know that can be so hard, but just create that book and do exactly what you said, Brooke, and
I
journal.
want to say around the creating a life that aligns with your values, you will have a much more satisfying, healthy life experience if you are living in alignment with your values. And I think a lot of us think that that's like a luxury or something, but the decisions we make on a daily basis, even the small ones, help us to be in alignment. And everyone deserves to have the best life possible that they can have. We all have our own challenges, but there are so many different moments in our life each day that shape how we feel about ourselves and about our life, right? And so if you're trying to listen to yourself and make decisions based on what feels right to you, you're going to be a much happier person.
How I feel with the world now, most people are scared to even be happy.
That's
They're scared to be happy. Like that comes with the worthiness. You have to be willing to dig, right? Nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it. We're worthy of it. It's not saying that it's easy because nothing fulfilling is easy. Now, certainly with three of us being here, who we are, we have done a lot of the digging ourselves, reflecting and learning and falling and getting back up,
And
right?
Helen, that's good. That's good insight. Because also, anyone who's looking to find their group, their people, to support them in the person they want to be, the life they want to have, be patient as you're bringing these people into your life, right? It's not something to rush. It should feel organic, and it takes time to build those connections.
It didn't take us overnight to cultivate what we have here, right? So it's been how many months and weeks that we continue to show up slowly, cultivating that trust. That takes time to develop. With that, don't look for volume. Don't go for like, how many do I want?
It's about the quality, not the quantity.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And we are very happy to share our dynamic with you all. We will definitely do this again. And thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. And until next time, stay true to yourself, lead with purpose, and thank you for watching.